This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets.
Global oil trading houses have emerged as early winners in the race to control Venezuelan crude flows, getting ahead of U.S. energy majors wary of credit and legal risks and securing a potentially lucrative business opportunity in the country with the world's largest crude reserves. U.S. President Donald Trump said U.S. majors would invest billions of dollars in Venezuela to quickly rebuild its dilapidated oil sector following the U.S. capture of President Nicolas Maduro earlier in January. Trump met top oil executives at the White House on Friday as his administration outlines a long-term plan to raise $100 billion to boost Venezuelan oil output. The first companies to secure any business in the wake of the U.S. military action in Caracas, however, were Dutch-based trader Vital and Singapore-headquartered Pure Trafigura, rather than U.S. majors.
Oil prices extended gains on Tuesday as heightened concerns surrounding Iran and potential supply disruptions outweighed the prospect of increased crude supply from Venezuela. Brent futures rose 22 cents, or 0.3%, to $64.09 a barrel by 0430 GMT, hovering near a two-month high struck in the previous session. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude climbed 23 cents, or 0.4%, to $59.73. The price increase comes amid intensifying protests in Iran, raising the possibility of some form of intervention by the U.S., in commodities strategists said on Tuesday.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
Indonesia Chief Economics Minister Airlangga Hartarto said on Tuesday that the implementation of the country's B50 biodiesel mandate would be subject to the prices of crude oil and crude palm oil. Indonesia, the largest palm oil producer, seeks to increase the palm-based biodiesel blend to 50% later this year.
U.S. crude oil and distillate stockpiles were expected to have fallen last week, while gasoline inventories likely rose, a preliminary Reuters poll showed on Monday. 5 analysts polled by Reuters ahead of weekly inventory data estimated on average that crude inventories fell by about 2.2 million barrels in the week to January 9. An extended poll that surveys more analysts will be published on Tuesday. The preliminary poll was conducted ahead of weekly reports from the American Petroleum Institute at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2130 GMT, on Tuesday, and the Energy Information Administration, the statistical arm of the U.S. Department of Energy, at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 15:30 GMT, on Wednesday. Next, we have the top news in metal markets. Gold prices were broadly steady on Tuesday, trading below a record $4,600 per ounce level reached in the last session amid sharpened geopolitical and economic uncertainty as investors booked profits. Spot gold traded little changed at $4,593.81 per ounce as of 0357 GMT, while U.S. gold futures for February delivery slipped 0.3% to $4,602.70. There's probably a few people out there just booking some short-term profits, but as we saw yesterday, the dip in Asia hours could be bought pretty quickly, said Kyle Rada, senior market analyst at Capital.com.
Finance ministers from the G7 and other major economies met in Washington on Monday to discuss ways to reduce dependence on rare earths from China, including setting a price floor and new partnerships to build up alternative supplies, ministers said. The meeting, convened by U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, included finance ministers from G7 members Japan, Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Canada and the U.S., as well as officials from Australia, Mexico, South Korea and India. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer and representatives from the U.S. Export-Import Bank and J.P. Morgan also attended, but no joint statement was issued by the meeting's participants.
We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector.
The global sugar surplus for the 2025-26, October to September, season is projected at 4.7 million metric tons, up 600,000 tons from a previous forecast, due to strong production and weaker demand, consultancy Kovrig Analytics said on Monday. The increase reflects stronger output in Pakistan and China, alongside improved production in Europe, Russia, parts of Africa and Indonesia, said the consultancy in a report to clients. It said the surplus increased despite cuts to sugar output in Brazil, Mexico and Thailand.
That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.